All right. So after we've done our utilizer or our water loss, just to figure out how much water do we use in the process, we started to look at the TAED metric, or what we call target, actual, efficiency, and downtime. All right, that's a real kind of popular metric for operators on the plant floor because it's something that they can control. They can see what the target is that they need to meet for the day. They can see how far off they are from that target by looking at the actual. How efficiently are they running the piece of equipment, and then what the total downtime is that they've got. We mentioned yesterday that on Tuesday that we've got 2 filling lines, filler 1 and 2, and that we're definitely going to go and create a template for those. I showed you guys how to use the model attributes just to be able to dynamically address those templates. So if I look in my template here, my template is using the model attribute in the retrieval section here, just to auto address it when we instantiate it into my model. So that was just a very quick example of how we would use that and how we would then structure out the rest of my templates. Now, the topics that we're going to cover today is a little bit more, just, I wouldn't say philosophical, but just how would I actually...
Uh-oh.
Does power go out?
Yeah,
Looks like it.
Like.
Kind of looks like it. So was anyone able to download that video?
No. They haven't made it available. They'll do that potentially today.
Okay.
Mm.
Guess we'll hang out and wait for him to come back. Jeff, looks like Lenny lost power or something happened. Any ideas? He must be on a call or something.
Eating peeps.
Eats enough of those and drinks enough of that odd Pepsi that he'll have enough energy to power the computer. Even though Lenny's gone, the recording is still running. It's fun.
Oh, we should watch what we're saying then.
That's why I bring it up.
You know, Jeff's a fantastic guy. He's a really great guy.
Oh, he's so nice. He's so nice. Absolutely.
He's really good. I mean, he's so clear when he explains things. He's a wonderful partner. I think it's.
But his choice in drinks, or I don't know. Not sure about that part.
Here we go.
Can't hear you, Lenny. You're back, but can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
There you
Here
go.
we go. Cool. Just going to start the recording again. Oh, it's already started. That didn't stop. Luckily for us.
Might have to cut out a little bit of us chatting in between.
That's fine. It's not a problem. All right. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about one of the requirements that we've got on our sheet here. So obviously to get the TAED metric, we need to understand what the target is. Okay. Now a target could have come from a work order that you downloaded from your MES system. It could have come from a tag in a historian or in a SQL database. In our example, we've got a very small little factory. We don't have all of that fancy MES type of solutions. So I need to be able to provide Flow the capability that I can actually enter the target for the machine. Okay. Now, I would like, at least because I'm going to do a little bit of short interval control to try and meet my target, I would like to tell the operator every hour how good is he tracking against the target from his actual value. Okay. But now you can think about it. I don't know who in his right mind would like to enter for every hour for the day, as the hours go on, what the target should be in a form. It doesn't make sense, right? It's much more valuable for a data capturer to capture the data once for a day, potentially, maybe even once for a week or once for a month, to actually understand what the target for the day is. All right, and that's what we're going to try and achieve here. So you'll notice what we're saying here is that we are going to create what we call a manual measure. So the retrieval type for this measure is manual. And it's going to be a daily time bucket. So it's only going to have to be filled in for the day. It's going to have a default value of 840,000 bottles. So that's what the line can produce per day. So, but I would like to track it every hour. All right, so there's a conundrum. All right, I'm going to fill in a value for a day, so a daily target. How am I going to go and create it to track it now per every individual hour in the day? Okay, so that's the first thing that we're going to look at this morning. So again, and remember, I'm going to do everything in the template side. So everything that I'm going to build out for these two filling machines is going to be based on the template. Now, yesterday when we started creating the template, we created a tag, and then we created this hourly KPI that tells me for every hour how much did I produce. Okay, but these are coming from a data source. It's coming physically from the story, and it's that counter lifetime tag that I'm using to determine what the actual is. Okay, how would I now create this manual measure? So a measure that I need to type in values manually into Flow. So it's not coming from a source. But the way that we do that is I'm going to use the icons here, and we call this bar. If I haven't explained it, this is what we call the flow zone. So if I talk about the flow zone, it literally just represents the items that I'm going to use to build out my model in my template side. So first requirement was it needs to be a daily measure, right? So I'm going to use the daily icon, right? And I'm going to drag it onto my metric here, and that's going to create a daily icon. And this is going to be my target. Okay. Right. Now, a few things that you will notice is, I don't know if it's that visible. Let me see if I can get the magnifier up and going here quickly. There we go. All right. So notice that that little icon there now becomes an icon of, it looks almost like it's a human. All right. If you can't see the human, there's its head, there's its shoulders. So it's a top side of a human. So when you see that human icon, that means this measure is what we call a manual measure. So it's a measure that I'm manually entering into Flow. Obviously, when you see that blue little database icon, that means it's getting retrieved from a source, Historian, SQL database, etc. Okay, so how do we now take this value and how do we get it to actually record or track against the hour? Right, because I'm calculating my actual per hour, but I want to now obviously use this target that I've got here. So let's see how we're going to do that. So first things first, the unit of measure for this guy is definitely not percentage. It's going to be bottles. Why does it keep using the percentage when I create these things? Again, my defaults bar at the top here is being set to percentage for the unit of measure. So I could have set that to bottles. If I know I'm going to work with a whole bunch of a certain unit of measure, I could have changed it in the top there. Okay. Now, a manual measure has a few ways that it will behave initially from an initial value perspective. All right. So when I look at the retrieval for a manual measure, it's got a few things that we can set that initial value to. So the first thing is we can set it to null, not zero, physically null, N-U-L-L. So that means there's going to be absolutely no value associated with this thing when it actually runs. Okay. The second option that we have is we can actually set it to 0. So the default value for this measure will always be 0. Then we can go and set it to whatever the previous value was. So if you want to now have a value for a day, what value should it take on the next day? Well, it will take the value whatever the previous day's value was. And then we've got this concept that I can actually set the value to a value of another measure. Okay, quite powerful, and I'll show you guys how we're going to use that to fulfill the requirements. Now, in this case, we know that the limit or the actual target for the day is 84,000 bottles. All right, so I'm going to do the set to previous value, and that will then allow me to give it a constant, an initial fixed value. And in my case, it's going to be 840,000. Cool. So that kind of fulfills this requirement that we said it's a manual measure. It's got a default value or initial value. It's a daily measure, and it is a unit of measure of bottles. Cool. I think I've got one too many zero, but there we go. All right. Simple enough. So I've got a manual measure that someone can go and alter in the end, but initially that value of that manual measure is going to be 840,000. There's another requirement though. Okay. And that requirement states that, and it's in the comments section here, it states here that you must be able to add data for at least 30 days into the future. Okay, so I need to give the capability to this so that I can already add all my targets for the month until the end of the month, because that's normally how people schedule stuff, right? They will schedule based on order intake or whatever the case is, but they will probably schedule a month in advance what the actual target is that we need to hit. So how do I do that? How do I tell Flow to create these future time buckets so that I can actually fill in my targets into the future? Well, we've got this object here, or this property here at the top. That is my projected property. So with that, we'll do, oops, sorry, there we go. This tells me how many days, because I'm working with my daily time bucket, how many days into the future must I create already context or time context for this measure. In my case, I'm going to change this to 30. So I'm going to have 30 time buckets into the future, and off we go. All right, let's see what this does. So I'm going to release my template. By releasing the template, my two machines or fillers is going to get an update. So I'm going to just do a quick update on both of them, and they will then generically inherit that target. Okay, so both of my machines now have this target value, and I'm just going to deploy them at the top. Cool. So let's see what's happening here. There we go. So it's got a constant value of 84,000. And you'll notice this looks a little bit different from what we saw yesterday, right? It's got this, I don't know if the remote or the sharing shows it very clearly, but we've got this kind of background that's kind of this lightish blue color, and then we've got this kind of frame here that's white. Why is that? Well, that just shows you that this is a projected measure going into the future. So if I look at the time buckets here, we can say, oh, there's already data created into the future all the way to the 6th of May, which is obviously 30 days from now. So I've got already values filled into the future for what the target should be. Any questions on that? Does that kind of make sense?
Makes sense, but can we go back to a preceding step? The idea that this needed to be manual. What was it in what you were doing that makes this a manual KPI, I think?
Yeah, all right. So the way or the operation that I've done to get it as a manual KPI is I've created it by using the icons from the zone themselves. Okay. If I create, let's just recap from that from yesterday. Yesterday, when I created the KPI, I used my historian as a source. Okay, so I'm just going to just quickly show that again. If I take any tag, I'm just going to use this canary historian here. If I take a tag from my canary and I use this tag to create a KPI, it knows it comes from a database, right? So it knows that this will now be a retrieved KPI based on the tag from the historian.
Okay.
If I did the same operation, but I used the KPI from the zone here, this minutely, if I now say, okay, I want this minutely, by default, that operation by using it from the flow zone will make it that it needs to be manually entered because I haven't associated historian to it. I'm not using a tag from the historian to create it. So by virtue of that, it's going to be a manual KPI.
That a human has to enter
Yes.
in Flow or in some other system or either.
Not another system, because if he entered it into another system,
Then
like
it would be a data
an
point, yeah.
MES,
It would be a
I would
data source.
retrieve it from there, 100%. I would retrieve it from that SQL database or wherever that is. So he needs to add it into Flow.
Got it,
And
thank you.
you will notice, I think we specify that it says it there. This must be editable in a form. Okay.
Got
So
it.
that little part tells you, okay, we still need to build a form so that people can actually interact with that value, change that value, mark up that value, or whatever the case is. Okay. Now, very interesting fact is, let's say this was a manual measure. So for years and years and years, people have been entering it in. All of a sudden, I now get a MES. I get a system that I can actually, rather than people filling it in manually, I can actually now retrieve it from that system. We do have the capability, and you'll notice it on the right-hand edge of a measure, that we do have the capability to change a measure's retrieval style. So I can use this drop down and say, okay, I actually now have a tag. I've got a SQL database. I've got a source. I'm going to change it from being manually entered to being retrieved. And from today forward, it's going to then automatically collect, but the measure stays the same. It's the same measure. It's just getting its data from a different source. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Cool. So we've got that guy. It's projected. It is now sitting into the future for 30 days. But this is a daily total. Okay. So if I pop this out, there's my total there. If I take the hourly actual and try and plot it here at the bottom, it's not even in the picture, right? Because that's quite a big change there in the range. Okay. So I need to do something here. I need to be able to compare this. See, there we go. So there's the daily target. This is my actual, but the actual is for every hour. Okay, so how do I now get this to compare how far am I off from my target? Okay, so I need to do something with this guy here. All right. So I need to be able now to create a second KPI. Needs to be an hourly KPI, right? And we're telling you it's also going to be manual, but I'm going to set it to the daily value. Okay, remember I said there's 4 options for a manual measure: set to null, set to 0, set to initial value, or set it to another measure's value. Okay, so how do I get a day into an hour? Well, I'm going to take my daily KPI. I'm going to drag it onto the calculator icon, and I'm going to divide it by 24. All right, so let's do this. This is going to be my hourly value. And I'm going to go and just do a very simple calculation here, where I'm going to take the original daily value and just divide it by 24. Cool. Make sure that my calculation is correct, validate it and release it, and update my packaging side here. And now I'm going to get this hourly daily total. I know it sounds very strange, and hourly, daily, what are you on about? But if we look at what this calculation now gives us, it gives us a line when it's done processing and doing the calc. There we go. That looks much better. So now if I take off the original target, there we go. There's my hourly value compared against what I'm actually achieving, or my target, 35,000. That's 840,000 divided by 24 gives you 35,000. So now I can compare my target with the actual that I'm producing and see how far I'm off. Okay, makes sense so far?
Yep.
Cool. Right. Now, there's one design philosophy and flow that you cannot mix and match interval types. Okay, so what do I mean with that? If I want to plot against a chart, if I want to now create on my dashboard here a very simple chart, and all I want to do is I want to say it's a time series chart, and I want to now plot actual against target. That's all I want to do. The problem here is that you specify a time or an interval. So I say I want an hourly chart. Cool. The problem with that is I cannot now mix and match intervals. I can add the hourly KPI, but it will not allow me to drag this daily calculated guy on top of here because it doesn't match the time periods. Right, so I cannot do that. I cannot mix and match days and hours onto the same chart. Cool. How do we get around it? The way that we get around it is by using that concept of saying, please go and look at another measure's value and set me to that. Okay, so I can now take the hourly guy, I can add it to my metric. This is going to be my hourly target. And I can now set the value for this guy to be another measure. And I can actually just drag my hourly calculated daily KPI on top of that. Cool. I know it might look like a workaround or a little bit of a very confusing or difficult way to get to a simple problem, but that is a philosophy that we have, that I cannot mix and match interval types. Okay. So it also states that this hourly projection must be projected for at least 24 hours into the future. Cool. So again, now the projection is in hours because I've got an hourly interval type. So I'm going to make it 24 hours. And that will then project it for 24 hours into the future. I made a mistake in my original calculation. Why is that? I forgot to project this guy as well to 30 days into the future. So I'm going to propagate that change to my instance. And the way that I do is I just lock it. Okay, so if I lock that property, if it's already created, I need to lock the property to then propagate the change. All right, so let's release that. Let's update here. And let's see where we are. All right, so I've got this new target value in here. Let's deploy all of this. Sorry, I can just do it on that top level. All right, so now my hourly calculation is into the future. That's great. My target is 24 hours into the future, so that's until tomorrow. So now I have the capability to add them to the chart. So now I can go and say, there's my actual. Now I can drag the target onto it. It's now matching. Let's make this guy a column. Let's keep that guy a line. And let's launch this quickly and see what we get. Perfect. There we go. Actual target. Cool. So that's the target. That's the actual So that's how I'm tracking against my target and my actual. Make sense? Any questions? Kevin's question, how do we change this? How do we actually now change those values? The way that we change those values is with a form. So again, I'm on my dashboard. I'm just going to reduce the size of this chart a little bit. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to add a new component, but this time I'm going to add a form. All right, so forms and flows is the way that we can interact with data. We can change values if we have the rights, and we can go and give them a new value there. All right, so in my case, it's going to be a time-based form. All right, so I'm going to change that daily target, and again, I'm going to select the correct time interval. Yes, it's going to be a daily form. Right, I'm just going to resize it a little bit. Let's open this guy up. All right, it's got this concept of a tab. Right, so think of Excel with its worksheets. We try to keep it very simple. We try to keep it looking a little bit like Excel because that's what data capturers and manual data capturers use. So I've got this concept of a tab. So this is going to be filler 1. I can then create another tab for my second filler, which is filler 2. And then I can go and drag on my target. And then I can also see how that changes the calculation to divide it by 24. All right. I can also specify it to show it to me for the whole month. And the way that I do that is I say, please change this to a month. And don't show it to me for the current day, show it to me for the end of the interval. So for the entire month, so that I can see that projected values in my chart as well. So let's just do that. Let's refresh the dashboard. So there we go. There's the target versus actual. And at the bottom here, I've got my form, 2 tabs for filler 1, filler 2. And there's the values all the way into the future to the 30th of April. Okay. Now, 2 concepts here. The bottom one is the calculated one, right? That's the one where we divided by 24 to get to the hourly value. Notice when I hover over it, it's got a black border. Okay, that means I can't change it. I cannot manipulate a value of a measure if it is derived from other measures. So I cannot fudge or jippo a calculated measure. Makes sense? Because then I don't have a single value of the truth. I can, however, change the source. So that's when you notice the little green bar. Okay. So if I change the KPI, or if I change the measure to, let's say, 86,000, it will go and recalculate, because I've made a change here, it's going to go and recalculate the bottom one automatically. All right, so we do have pending logic that will do the recalculation. So if I refresh this, there we go. It took the new value divided by 24, so that is now my new daily value. Okay. I can see its history. I can see where it currently is. So that was the original value there. And that's the new value that we've got, version 2, because I've changed its source. So it's got that dependency logic built in from that side. So that's how we would build a form, to use that form to then go and change or update the target values from that perspective. Make sense?
Yes.
Any questions? Yes.
No questions.
Cool. Anything I need to do again? I know sometimes I go a bit quick, but please, guys, if you want me to do anything again, happy to do so. All right, so that's just the cool. Yeah, we'll make sure to get those out, Kevin. So I just wanted to explain this whole concept of manual measures, how I can use the manual measure, how I can use it to compare from different time frames, kind of get a way to compare it to the same time frames, so that I've got this concept or notion that I can actually compare hours with hours, because that's at the end of the day what we actually want to do.
Lenny, I've
All
got a
right.
quick question.
Yeah,
How
sure.
do they actually use the form? Like, how do they access the form, and where do they actually view the form from?
Oh, okay, cool.
So-
Right. So the form gets served by our web server, right? So the Flow server not only hosts the dashboards and the reports, it also hosts the forms. Okay. So you'll notice that obviously my web server is spin up against a specific port. By default, this port is set to port 80. I've got a lot of other software, Canary, Axiom, which uses port 80 as well. So obviously a lot of software vendors will hog port 80 as the default port. So that's the only reason I've changed the port to spin it up on something else. All right. So what that means is if I go to my browser here and I just go to localhost and then put in the port number 8083, that's going to now provide them or send them to the website, the web server. Yeah. Now, the left icon here, that's what we call the index. This index will then bring up the model structure that you build here in the information tab. So I've got a very original structure here. Sorry about that. But if I do that, it will mimic that structure 100%. So new folder and then new dashboard, very original. That's obviously not what you're going to name it, but the point is that we mimic these things here. Now, a little bit of sidetrack, sorry about it, but I just want to show it. These two components, this chart and this form, lives on the dashboard. All right, so you'll notice that it's embedded in the tree. We will not browse further than the dashboard level, if that makes sense. Okay, so if I open this, it will open the dashboard with these two components linked to it. To your point, Andrew, I might not want to open up the entire dashboard. I just want the form, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can move the form out of the containment of the dashboard. So I can move it under the folder level. Right, so now it's not contained by the dashboard. If I do that and I give this guy a refresh, now I will have access to nothing. Okay. For that purpose, why can't I see it as yet? Right, the reason why I can't see it is I'm not logged in. All right, so I need to log in because I need my credentials to be timestamped against any change that I make. Right, so for audit trail purposes, I need this. Now I need to think what this password is. There we go. All right, so now I'm logged in. How do I know I'm logged in? My initials is now in the little bubble there. And now, there we go. I've got access to my form. Okay, so very important concept. You have to be logged in to see the forms. Okay. If I now select the form, there we go. There's the form. So it's web accessed, Andrew, based on the URL. Notice that it's a very simple, after the ports, you're going to access charts and then the specific chart ID or chart number. If I open up this guy, there we go. That little ID there just tells you what the chart ID is. So
okay.
You can
that was exactly what I was
Yeah.
trying to find, the URL part. Okay, cool.
Cool. There's another option here. You can also right click on it here, go tasks, copy link or open it. But yeah, it's useful to understand the ports and how to access it just via that URL. Cool. Right. Any other questions? All right. Cool. All right. So we kind of fulfill the requirement to be able to manually enter a target and how to now see if I'm meeting my production target for every hour that I'm producing. Okay. We've done the actual production already that we've done yesterday by looking at the counter tag and then changing it to be retrieved, and then using the bottle count tags that's in that historian. So nothing funny there. All right. Now we've got the second thing I want to talk about for today. All right, and this is this concept of how do I meet my efficiency target? Okay, so I need to be able to create a KPI for efficiency. Right. The calculation for efficiency is pretty straightforward. It is the percentage of the ratio between how long have I been running divided by what my available time is to run. Yeah. So again, how long was I in the running state versus what is my available time to run? Okay. How do I know what I'm running? That's in the runtime KPI. That is my active KPI. It's an hourly KPI. And I'm going to look at a tag for my machine. And when the value of that tag is equal to 20, I need to go and figure out what is the time and state for that. Okay, so let's first see how we're going to do that. Again, I'm going to go to my template here. And in my template, it's a different KPI from throughput. Okay, so remember what I said, the metric tells me what the KPI is that I'm looking at. Okay, in this case, all of this is related to throughput. What am I throughputing every hour? What am I throughputing for the day? What's my target for the day, etc. So it doesn't make sense for me to now just go and add to this metric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new metric. Right, and this metric, I'm going to call that my availability, because that's what I'm measuring. I'm measuring I'm measuring my availability. Okay, now very important. I have to use a tag. So in my case, I'm going to use a tag. I'm going to drag the tag on there. And this is going to be, again, my actual that I'm going to get. And I now need to bind this, okay, to the signal from my historian. So let's do that exercise again. I'm going to go to my historian here, open up the packaging section, and there we go. FL001 state, right? So it told me I need to look at the state tag. When that's equal to 20, I need to be able to do that. Cool. So let's open up this tags retrieval, drag in the state there. Again, remember guys, it's hard-coded to that number. If we look back at what we did yesterday to get that working, I created that model attribute for the equipment number, and I added in this little placeholder. So I'm going to cheat a bit. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to just paste it in there. Right. Because I added that model attribute to the folder level, it already inherited it for this new KPI. That's perfect. And if I release this now, and I go to my model, and I update all of this, I'm going to get a new KPI availability. There we go. And if I open up the actual, there we go. It's retrieving. It's working. I don't have to do anything other than that. Cool. Oh, sorry. Zoom in there. So there we go. There's the state engine of that machine. And they said that if it is in state 20, that's when I need to know what the time and state is. Okay. And it will automatically have done it for the second one as well. Looking at 002. So that's also working. So let's refresh. There we go. All right. Now, there's a little bit of a problem. Notice that I was naughty. It created this ability copy because I forgot to change my instantiated name for this metric. Remember yesterday we used that same concept where I'm using that model attribute to give it a nice unique name. I didn't do that. I have to do that. Okay. Else it's going to create these copies for me because a metric must be unique. Metrics always have unique names within the system. All right, so I've got my actual tag. Now I need to know time and state. So for the hour, I'm going to take that tag, drag it onto the hourly icon. This is going to be my time in state. Or actually, better yet, running. Oh, it is the wrong unit of measure. That is definitely going to be hours. And this guy is also going to be hours, and I'm going to lock that. All right, so now I'm going to go to my retrieval section here. I'm going to change the aggregation to a time in state aggregate. And I'm going to say when that is equal to 20, please tell me how long it is in that state. Let's release this. Let's update. I'm going to get a new KPI under here, which is my running KPI, and let's deploy. Cool. Let's see what it spits out. So there we go. Goodness gracious, that's a lot of hours. You're going to tell me that's not right. And we're going to tell you it is. And the reason why that is correct, something to note that we've added here in the comments is time and state, always. The time and state retrieval will retrieve the value as milliseconds for that hour. Okay, so you need to now figure out and look at the required unit of measure. The required unit of measure is hours. So I need to convert my milliseconds to hours. Okay. The way that we do that is you'll notice in the retrieval section for this guy, we do have the capability to add a scaling factor. Right. Now, I always get this wrong. So I always use the calculator. So there, what are we looking at? We want to figure out how many milliseconds there is an hour. So 1 hour divided by 60. That is minutes divided by 1,000. There we go. Let's copy that. Put it in the scaling factor there. All right. Now, remember, this has already been instantiated. It already exists. If I want this property to get pushed by the template update, remember to lock. Okay, if you don't lock, it's not going to push the property through. All right, let's release. Let's update. And now, let's see what happens. There we go. It added that retrieval property. Okay, but it didn't backfill. This is still version 1, and it's still the original value. You guys hear what I'm saying? It's still, it didn't apply the scaling factor. I need to now go and backfill this because I've made a config change. So I'm going to press the set button, and it's going to go and redo it, and it's going to apply the scaling factor. Okay, now you're going to tell me, Lenny, that is ludicrous. What if I've got 100 of these things? Do you expect me to go and open each and every one of them up and manually go and backfill them? So there we go. Right, I'm missing a 24 or a, that's now in minutes. So I still need to divide by another 60. Anyway, that's why I always get this wrong. But my point is, I need to go and backfill it. Now there's a property, and you need to be careful with this. But if I go and look at my system properties, there is this auto backfill property. So this is false by default for very good reason. But if you set this to true, it will automatically backfill your measures if you update it from the template. Okay, so it will automatically go and backfill everything make sure that if there was any config changes, that it will use that and it will push it through. Okay. This is only available if you're an admin user to change, and by default it is false. Just be careful. How far is it going to backfill it to? It's going to backfill it to whatever your default backfill date is here at the top. So if this default backfill date was set to the year 2022 or 2023, and that's why this is this is an admin function. Just be aware of it, because then we're going to hit your historian all the way from 2-3 years ago and try and recalculate everything. So just be wary of this, but it will save you a lot of time doing this, 100%. Cool. Everybody with me so far on that? All right, so now I know how long I've been running in the hour. I now need to try and figure out to get my available time. I need to take the run time and divide it by what was the available time for me to run. And a trick thing here, well, not a trick, but I also have to do this not just for the hour, but I need to have a Shiftly availability count as well. All right, so how do I now figure out what is the duration of this? For an hour, it's easy. You're going to divide it by 60. So in this case, I've utilized this piece of equipment for the entire hour, so my availability score is going to be 100%, which is great. Okay, so I could have done a very simple calculation. I could have taken this running KPI, drag it onto the calculator to create my availability score. Availability, right? This is going to change to percentage. And I'm going to simply take that, divided by 60, multiplied by 100 to give me percentage. Right. Why 60? 60 minutes in an hour. Let's check my calculation there. Let's release it. Let's update. Because of update. Let's deploy. And what I'm going to end up with is a nice availability score of percentage. Here we go. 86%, 33%. I was down for those 2 hours, 0%. So you can see a nice percentage here. But this wasn't the smartest way to do it. Why do I say that? The reason why I say this wasn't the smartest way to do it is because of the following. They require me to do a Shiftly availability score as well. All right, let's look at my calendar. And in my case, if I look at my shift pattern here, I've got 3 shifts set to 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. Okay, so you could have argued, no, Lenny, you silly nitwit, you just divided 10 by 8 times 60 for 8 hours. But what if on a Wednesday, for some other bizarre reason, well, I create a new shift pattern here, and from next week onwards, my Wednesday shift is only going to be 4.1 hours long. Now my whole calculation comes to a grinding halt. Yeah, you guys see the problem. I can't divide this by 8 anymore because it's not 8 hours long for the shift. Okay, so how do I get around this predicament? Cool. So if I use a measure, and I create a calculation of that measure. So if I do this exercise again, if I take this hourly KPI, drag it to the calculator icon, I'm going to now call this my duration. Okay. The reason why I do that is, who can tell me again, what does a historian provide me? What is the 3 things that a historian do? We called it yesterday a TVQ. Timestamp.
Value
Yeah, Brad.
quality.
There we go. All right. So in Flow, we've got the same concept. Notice that I've got the dot value field here for this measure. Okay. Remember, a measure stores 3 things in our database: the value, the quality, and the duration. So you have access not only to the value column, you've got access to the quality column as well as the duration column. So by changing this from dot value to dot duration, will now provide me with the duration of that time bucket. Okay. How do you know all of these dot fields, you might ask? If you now select this little insert menu option here, you can see here that I've got under measure, the value, the quality, the duration. If there was limits on it, I can get the exceptions of the limits, and even any model attributes. So I can use model attributes as placeholders to do some quite cool calculations as well. Right, again, milliseconds. Right, so this will return it into milliseconds. So let's just do this as an example. Let's release this guy. Let's update here. Update, where am I? There we go. Now I've got this duration KPI, and if I deploy this, this is going to give me a value of the duration, and that is going to be, let's just wait for it to process. There we go. And that is milliseconds for an hour. Okay, so that's a much better way of doing it. So we're not going to hard code it, guys. You guys are not going to hard code it for this exercise. We're not going to do this. All right. I'm going to use this duration field here. I'm going to drag that duration field here, and this now becomes divided by the duration. Okay. I could have done this scaling already at this duration level. I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to cheat again. I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to go into my duration metric, and I'm going to say, please go and multiply it with my value there. Right, remember, it already exists. I need to lock it to propagate the change. Let's do that. And then on my availability, again, I've changed the calculation, lock it to propagate that change. And let's release. Let's update. And was I smart enough? No, I wasn't. I kept it at false. From now on, I'm going to make it true. But let's quickly just backfill this guy. Right, so now it's got the new calculation pushed through from the template. I'm dividing it by that. If I didn't make any silly mistakes, it should spit out the exact same number, which it does not. I think I've got them the wrong way around. But anyway, that is the whole concept of getting the duration field. And you're going to do exactly the same for the shift time. Okay. This is another thing that I quickly want to talk about. Let me just see, what did I do wrong here? I think, oh, I didn't backfill these. That's what I did not backfill these. So if I backfill this duration, it's going to obviously now already multiplied with that number. And that should automatically kick off this guy to recalculate. It did. So now I'm on version 3, and there we go. That was my mistake. Yeah, I just didn't backfill that duration guy. Right. So we're going to do that. Cool. Now, the second thing is I'm going to say, all right, but I want to know what is the average or the roll up for the shift. So I want to know what is this value, this shiftly value based on a shift. Okay. So you might tell me, Lenny, that's easy. I've seen you doing this millions of times. I'm going to take this hourly value. I'm going to drag it onto the shiftly value there. And it's going to give me shiftly availability. I'm just going to change this to be an average. And there we go. Deploy that out or release that. I'm going to update it on this side. And now I've got a shiftly availability number. This is wrong. You cannot do this. The math will not work out. Okay. This is not your shiftly availability. This is an average for the hours in the shift. This is not the shiftly availability number. Make sense? Where's Zhang? Zhang's on the call. Zhang, you agree with me, right?
Is this
That
a
an
trick
average of an
question?
My question is, I cannot take an hourly KPI that is a percentage calculation, drag it onto the shiftly icon and just do an average of that. This is not the shiftly number for the availability.
Do you have to do one for each parameter in that equation?
100%. You have to do one for the denominator and for the divider. That is your equipment availability. Sorry, Kevin, I rudely interrupted you. You had a comment.
No, I'm simply confirming to understand the problem is that you're doing an average of an average here, which is
100%.
yeah, okay, understood.
You're removing outliners. You are completely botching it. So,
okay.
To John's point, I need to take this running hours. I need to sum the running hours for the shift. Okay, so that is my total for the shift. It's going to sum the individual hours up. All right. The duration, I need to pull the same trick, right? I need to now either go and create a duration property for my shift so that it will automatically detect what the duration is based on my shift pattern. So I'm going to take my running shiftly KPI, drag it onto the calculator. This is going to be my duration. Open this guy up, change it from being dot value. Let's do this little exercise. I want the measure duration, right? So it will automatically add it for you. I want this duration property. And now I need to redo the ratio. So this guy is completely wrong. I'm going to delete this KPI. I'm going to take my running KPI, drag it onto the calculator. This is now my shiftly availability number. And I need to redo the calc. Again, it's going to be a percentage. It's going to be running. It's going to be duration. And then it becomes, and I'm doing something silly here, but I'll show you how to easily. I'm typing out the equation every time, which doesn't seem like a good engineering thing. I'm going to show you guys now how to address that. I'm going to take running, divide by duration. That is the right way of doing it. Normalize it to the same time frame, then do the rationalization equation in there. Right, so that's correct. That is correct. All right, so let's update this. All right, so now I've got that new KPI. Let's deploy it. And now I'm going to have an availability score for my shift. Cool. Everybody happy with that explanation? Okay, now second thing that I did, I typed in the same calculation for availability. This guy here, sorry, this calculation here, I typed in the exact same calculation to work out the ratio. It's just a ratio calc, right? So there's a better way of doing this. You could have created a what we call a user-defined function. So if I go to my toolbox, we do have out-of-the-box functions that I can use in my equations. Sum, average, minimax. These are statistical averages, sum and min. If and null checks, all the logarithmic stuff. And in XOR, all the powers and remainders, some trig functions, and then we've got this option to create your own. So I would have rather created a function here, and it will be my ratio to percent function. And I would have rather created it in one place. So I'm gonna, it's based on C# notation, kind of you create a little function. You have parameters that you pass into your function. So this is going to be the actual and actual. And then you're going to have another double parameter. This is going to be the target. Probably could call it denominator and divider as well. And then what do you return? Well, you simply return 100 multiplied by the actual divided by the target. So that's a very simple little function. Validate the function that I didn't make any spelling mistakes. Yes, it's case sensitive. So if that was a capital A, that should be a capital A there. So you need to remember that. Let's close that. And now I could have, rather than typing this over and over and over again, I could have just used my function and then replace the actual, which is the running, and replace the target, which is the duration. And that should give me the exact same value. Okay, so we can use these user-defined functions. Again, I'm going to build it in my template side, so everything will then update from that perspective. Cool. So I use these functions quite a lot to do these kind of repetitive scenarios for me over and over and over again. Okay, so that fulfills this requirement to figure out what is my actual, what is my active, what is my efficiency score, and then the last one is just to figure out what the downtime is. That's very simple. It's exactly what we've done, time and state. In this time, the state is just going to be 0. So every time that the machine is 0, it needs to just tell me what the design is. And just that, remember, it's in milliseconds to do your conversion. Cool. Any questions around that? So technically, with that kind of little background, you should be able to finalize and get all your KPIs for your TAED sorted. Any questions? Anything I need to redo? Anything you want to see again? Anything you didn't understand?
I think I'm all set.
Is the idea that you then will go through the production per product a little bit, and that last one in the Excel file, the events,
Yes.
to prepare us for being able to complete the whole cert?
Correct.
Okay.
Cool. All right. All right. So then the second part of it is to now understand what is the product per, or the production per product. Okay. So this is a little bit more for the production team focused. They want to understand what is their good product, what is their bad product, not just totals, but actually against which product are they getting it. Okay. Up until now, we focused around time. Time periods of hours, time periods of days, time periods of shifts. When does a production start and stop? Will an operator on a plant floor decide, oh, it's top of the hour, I'm going to start the machine right now at the top of the hour? No, it doesn't work like that. Okay. So a product run can start whenever, it can stop whenever, it depends on when it's downtime, it depends on when they load the new SKU. So we cannot use this concept of hours to track against that. We need something else to give us the context of what was the duration of the product run. If we've got that, then we can use that to say, well, I know in this hour, I was busy making these type of products. So in order to do that, I need to create an event frame of the production runs. Okay. So I've got this concept of what we call a trigger for the event. And again, I'm going to look at this state engine of my machine. When it's in state 10, it's running, and then it ends when it's in state 30. Okay. So, and again, I need to use a tag to achieve this. Right. So let's see how that's going to work. So let's look at my historian. Let's look at the state. There we go. There's the state. Let me just give it a little bit more time. Let's get a repeated state in here. All right. So this is the typical kind of state engine for my filling machines. There we go. So when it's in state 0, we know that's downtime. Then we set it up in state 10. It goes into setup mode. Step 20 is when it's running. And then step 30 is when we go into CIP, cleaning in progress. Right. So they want us to trigger when it goes into 10 and end when it's 30. So that's now my production run kind of cycle. And I need to use a tag to achieve this. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to go to my template. I'm going to create a new metric. That metric is going to be the state of my machine. And I'm going to add a tag into there. And I am going to be naughty. And I'm going to use this exact same retrieval that I've done here for my machine state. Or I could have just used this tag as it is. Let's maybe do that. That's a better design. And I don't reduplicate tag values. I've already got the state. That tag there that I use to determine for the TAED, am I running or not, is the state tag. I'm just looking at it from different states. So let's do this. I'm rather going to use the same tag, but I'm going to create a calculated tag of that. Right. And now this is going to be my product run state. Okay. I'm going to drag that into my state metric. Right, so you can see I can move these things quite freely around in the model. Just because it's using that as a source doesn't mean I cannot add it to a different metric. Okay, so let's release that. All right, if I can spell, that would be great. Let's just do that. Cool. Right, let's open this up. All right, so let's think about it. With the tag calculations, I can do quite powerful things. So I know I need to start when I'm in state 10 and then end when I'm in state 30. So I can take that state engine and I can convert that state engine into a very simple Boolean signal of a 1 and a 0. Okay, so how would I achieve that? So let's take the tag value. Right, so there we go. There is the value of that state engine. And I want to convert it when it's equal to 10. It was return a 1. And then when it goes to 30, it needs to return a 0. And if I've got that, I've got my state engine. All right, so if the value is greater or equal to 10, and the value is less than 30, okay? I hope this works, one shot. If that is true, okay, so I'm doing an inline if, so the question mark in C# notation is just an inline if. So what I'm saying, if it's greater than 10, less than 30, then return a 1, else return a 0. All right, so this is just a very simple little inline if statement. Let's validate that, and let's release this. All right, so there we go. Let's update my template here. And now I've got a nice state guy here, and this tells me when I'm running or not. So let's see if that actually worked. There we go. That's pretty cool. So I've converted that state engine into just a very simple little, just into a very simple little discrete signal. So there we go. Starts, goes to 1, ends when it's 30. So you can see that quite nicely there. There we go. Starts when it's going into event 10, and then when it ends, there we go, it drops down. So now I can use this as a very simple trigger to my event frame. So this duration here, where it's equal to 1, is the duration that I'm running product. Very cool. So now I can go into my template. I can now use the lightning bolt. That's an event. Let's drag that onto my filler machine, and this is going to be my product run. And I'm going to now use this product run little discrete trigger of mine, drag it into the trigger section. When the value is 1, start it. When the value is equal to 0, stop it. Very simple. Okay. So let's do that. Let's update again this side. Right, I've got my new event there. Let's deploy it. And this event should now track, when it's done running through all the historical data, that event should track my events here. I just didn't backfill it far enough. Sorry about that. I played with these things. That's very stupid of me. Let's just do that. Let's refresh. There we go. It tracks that signal 100%. Okay. Now, how do I know what product is running? Because at the end of the day, I would like to know how much of a certain product am I manufacturing. Right, so again, in my historian, I've got this product tag. Right, and the product tag tells me what SKU am I running on the line. So if I drag this product tag onto this guy here, there we go. It's an integer number that just tells me for this product run, I am running product 1. For this 2 product runs, I am running product 4. For this product run, I'm running product 1 again. So I can see what products gets loaded into the machine. I was running here. This product went to 0. We loaded the same product in again. So I can now go and track what product was running based on this event frame. Right, so how do we do that? In my template, I'm going to create another metric here. I'm going to call that metric my product metric. And I'm going to create a tag that's going to be my product that I'm running. I'm going to change this to be SKU. And I'm going to retrieve it from my product tag. Okay, cool. Remember, because it's in the same folder structure, I have access to the model attribute. And again, I need to change out that model attribute to be the same as this guy. Sorry, I'm just copy and pasting, but it's not the state tag. It is now the product tag. So let's do that. Let's change that to that. All right, so that will now automatically look up the product code as well. Let's release that. Now in my product, I can now associate what we call attributes. Think about it as metadata to the product run or to that event frame. And I can associate all these different attributes now to that. In this case, I'm going to create an attribute. It's going to be retrieved because I'm going to get it from the recipe that's loaded from the control system. I could have manually entered it, same philosophy. If the operator needs to tell me what that SKU was, we could have created a manually entered attribute, or you can calculate it based on other conditions. You can create a calculated attribute. In our case, it's going to be simple. It's going to be retrieved. It's going to be our product tag, and I'm going to use the product tag to know exactly what the product is that I am getting. Right. Let's release this guy. Let's update here. And now you'll notice that my product run has an attribute associated with it. And that attribute is now the actual product. Okay. I'm just going to change my default backfill date back because every time it's only backfilling to the 4th. And that's why you only see values there. All right, so I'm just going to do a manual backfill there. And that's now going to associate the different product codes with the different runs. Okay, there we go. So running product 1 there, running product 3 there, running product 2 there. That's perfect. So now I've got the product per the event frame. Okay. How do I associate that context now to my good production? Okay. I already have the good production where? In my throughput KPI. Right? There it is. Hourly good production. What context does this KPI have at this point in time? It has the context of time, but that time is based on my calendar. Hours, days, shifts. I can now associate the context from the event frame as well. So I'm going to add the event frame as context as well. This will now give me a total product count for the duration of that product run. And if I add the attribute to it, it will then also tell me not just the total for the run, but every hour, how much of the product were I manufacturing. Okay. If you just drag the event frame, it's just going to be the total. If you drag the product, it's going to now slice it per the product codes as well. Right. Let's release. Let's update. Right. And notice now the icon, it will tell me that there's not only time context, so hourly context, it also has the event overlaid over it. So that tells me this KPI has time context as well as event frame context associated with it. If I open this guy up now, there we go. I've got the total for the products that was run in that hour. And I also have the total for that exact event frame. So from 3 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock, well, 16 minutes past 3 to 11:30, that was the actual total of product produced for that product run. Okay. Makes sense so far? Cool. What is product 4? I don't know. Could be any product depending on the SKU or the recipe that was loaded or whatever the case is. So how do I create a little lookup to tell me that product 4 is actually apple juice or what is it? Pepsi, Pete's, Cola, whatever the case is. Okay. So I need to now enumerate that value to a physical string description of what that product is. Okay. How do we do that? In our databases, the databases that we created yesterday to give me the historical data for the water meter, sorry. We also created a little table that's going to act as our product lookup table. Right, so if I look at databases here, if I look in the integration database that script created yesterday, there is a table called product. Oh, and it's a very simple little table. It tells me an ordinal. It tells me a product description. So when it's product number 4, it's pear. Product number 5, it's apple. Let's do this just for giggles. Number 4, it's going to be. All right, so I would like to go and look up to enumerate it based on this table in the SQL database. Right, let's go back to Flow. I've already created a database for that SQL, right? So I've already have a source. So there I can see the tables. Underneath that tables, I've got my historical values as well as my, sorry, I've clicked the wrong thing now. There we go, product and historical values. So that's already set up based on the work I've done yesterday. What I have to do in my toolbox here is now create something what we call an enumeration, a lookup. Okay, we've got 2 types of lookups in Flow. You can either create a static one. So if you do not have a PLM or an MES solution that you can go and look up what the description of the products are, you can go and manually type it into Flow. Just a very simple lookup table. In our case, we do have a database. So I'm going to use this lookup feature here. All right, so this is going to be my product lookup. Let's open this up. And it tells me here, just drag a data source. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to take my SQL database. And I'm going to just drag it into there. Cool. All right. Now I can write a query. Right, there is a little example query that we've got in here that it will tell us what we have to do. So the engine will replace whatever the ordinal is in that. But technically, we just need to write a query that's going to return the ordinal and the description as value. Right, so that's technically what we have to do. So the word must match ordinal, and the actual value that it needs to replace needs to match the word value. So all we need to do here, we already have ordinal. So this product description must just be as value. And I'm just going to let's see. Oh. Oh, sorry, comma. All right, let's do that. Product, you silly thing. There we go. Ordinal value. I'm going to take this query here. I'm going to paste it in here just to make sure I've got the correct lookup. So that will now, based on whatever that ordinal value is, give me the correct string value. Only thing that I need to do in my template is I need to tell this attribute that I've got, this product attribute, please use the product enumeration. Right. It already exists, so I'm going to lock it to propagate that change. I'm going to release it. I'm just going to update this one for now. There we go. And let's see. There we go. It got the right enumeration from the DB replace it with that, and now I've got a nice string representation of that. It should have gone and redo this as well. So now instead of, there we go, that was the old one, the old version with product number 4. It's now product number with the correct attribute description. So it will automatically do the cascading of the dependents based on the change of that attribute. And that's how you get the product, and that's how you associate it with your measures. So with that little piece of help, you're going to create these 2 events, and that will then give you all of these KPIs already so that you can work out what my total throughput is per product and my bad production per product. Don't want to give away more than that for now. We can always have another session if you guys struggle a little bit with that to go through that, but I want to leave it at that point if that's okay with everybody. Kevin, I know that was a bit quick, but I hope that give you an idea of how we're going to build the events, associate the product context, look up the string value based in that database that we've got, and then associate it to the hourly KPIs to not only provide time context, but also provide event context. Any questions on that?
Nothing that a video can't help answer by going through it, because you do go
Cool.
pretty quick, but it's good stuff and leaves time for questions.
Right, perfect.
For our, I want to 2 topics very quickly. So we go through, so what's next for us for the certification? Maybe I missed that somewhere, but as I would understand it, based on what I've read, we go through videos, we set up our system based on that Excel file, then we do a review. I think we set up a review session with you or somebody else, and you check our work and as kind of the test. Was there anything else aside from that we do? Oh, I think we export a model, I think it was, export, and then you guys check it, but anything else?
No, so you're right. So you're going to build out your work or your little project based on that Excel file. The steps also guide you in that course certification step in the learning portal.
Yep.
It guides you through the steps. It tells you if there's articles. Cool, thanks, Jason. There's articles that it links you to. It gives you a little bit more advice on that. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're going to create you're going to back up your system. You're going to submit it through that same portal where you downloaded the file. We're going to receive it, we're going to mark it, and then we're going to give you the result. But that's it. That's the videos and then the test. That's it, Kevin. That's the part of the certification.
Awesome. How will you guys be publishing out the videos? Via Teams or some other method? Recording for today and Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll probably save it to my OneDrive and then just give you guys an access to that as a OneDrive access.
Awesome. Okay. Was there anything that came up yesterday in that quick session, the 1-hour session you guys did, that I unfortunately couldn't go to? Anything important or valuable?
We spoke a little bit about fault finding. How do you know if Flow is not doing what it's supposed to do? How do you start to look and figure out what's going wrong? I would like to have a more in-depth fault finding / maintenance session like this with everybody on the call, Kevin. So I think we'll probably schedule something with this session, with this team, around maintenance in general and fault finding, as per your requests as well. So I think that will probably be the next section that we will have is around that.
Okay. Last question is for best practices, kinds of ideas, and how far you can take using views and store procedures, and maintaining setups for multiple customers, recommendations on multiple instances, and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Is there documentation in the help files? I haven't looked yet, but is there stuff there, or is that maybe not that I want to give everybody more and more sessions, but is that something you guys will cover later?
Yeah, currently there's no best practice around template propagation for multi-site kind of solutions. Unfortunately, it has to be a session. So, but maybe that session would be then good springboard to actually document that as well. So that's something that we need to work on. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I hope this was informative. I hope this helps you as a little bit of a springboard to the certification. Again, any questions, feel free. And then I hope to see your submitted projects in the near future.